I think we're missing the forest for the trees here. The idea is Israel's presence in the West Bank is illegal. They have to leave.
Well,
So
that
now
whether
talking,
something is legal or illegal is not really at issue here. Like everything here,
of
the
course it
legality of
is.
all
Of
of
course
this
it
is.
is. And when he did not like what international law has to say, he manufactured complexity and ambiguity where there was none. The entire international human rights consensus is that Israel's occupation are absolutely and categorically illegal.
All the UN General Assembly resolutions are non-binding. When you look at like a resolution like 242, it doesn't.
242 is the Security Council, though, right? Also, just to be clear, no one gives a fuck about international law, like when it comes to this stuff. People who invoke 242 like it's gospel would also say that the Palestinians were completely justified in fighting against the partition plan. Okay, so this dude, Palestinian American, I think, debated Destiny. Seems to be there are some claims of disinfo.
Cuck bastard.
Are you going on a debate panel or something?
No, but thanks for the dono again. Okay, so let's see. Because I've been asked to review this. Let's go.
So I had a long conversation with Destiny about Palestine and Israel. And within just a few minutes of hearing him speak, I realized that Nathan Robinson's description of him as having sub-Wikipedia level knowledge on the issue was actually too generous of Nathan.
Ooh.
And what's remarkable is that even though Destiny was clearly out of his depth, that did not shake his confidence one bit. He projected authority by ridiculing the facts I was bringing up, even though he had absolutely no clue what he was talking about.
So to be clear, you're saying before that, you're saying that the Israeli official policy was to use human shields. That was codified in the military doctrine.
That is official.
It's so
policy.
crazy that they say that, yet the only image I've ever seen of the human shield is that one boy on the Jeep that gets posted 50 billion times over and over again. But okay.
But
I think when people say Israel has a human shield policy, what they mean is that until 2002, maybe later, they used to do this thing where they would get Palestinian residents, like civilians, to go and knock on doors of suspects. I think that's the claim. And I think at the time, when the Israelis were banning it, I think they even referred to it as human shields, but I don't actually know who in Israel referred to it as that. B'Tselem, well, yeah, they would. But yeah, no, I think this was actually described, but generally, it was described generally as human shield stuff. Where are we here? Yesterday's ruling came after a temporary injunction. Oh, it was an injunction in 2002, so it must have been properly banned in 2005. That's why I've got those 2 years on my head, I think. But this is in reference to, troops forcing them to knock on the door of a wanted Hamas fugitive. Yeah. Was it always by? I think it did as part of their policy. Were people allowed to say no? But yeah, I think it actually was force. Yeah. Forcing them into buildings to see if they were booby trapped. Yeah, they did do that. Okay. So, I think that's what we're referring to.
Confidently dismissing facts doesn't change that they're true.
Oh!
Here is a BBC News article about how when the Israeli Supreme Court banned the Israeli military from using Palestinian civilians as human shields, the Israeli military establishment and the defense minister protested that ban because it was useful for them as a matter of policy. And that practice continues even after the ban.
This is the article he's talking about. Is this to do with the same thing? Condemn the use of human shields. The use of Palestinian civilians can often diffuse a tense situation. I'm trying to think of how that would work. How would it ever work in a way that diffuses? Like if you're getting them to knock on the door of a suspect so you can arrest someone and it... I don't know. But obviously, how can you do that without putting the person who's knocking in danger? Alternative methods of apprehending suspects, such as bulldozers, would endanger the lives of soldiers and civilians. Is it just because if you knock on the door with a civilian, they'll have their guard down, they let them in, then you can just jump in and arrest them? Is that the idea? Whereas if the IDF knocks on the door and they're like, oh, fuck, they're after me, then they just start shooting through the door. That's probably the only rationale I can hear for using it, but okay.
It was useful for them as a matter of policy. And that practice
continues to this day, 2022. Oh. What's this article? Yeah, I think Destiny's saying it was only one picture of the kid. I know what picture he's talking about, the kid in front of the Jeep or something. But yeah, I think it goes a bit beyond that. Let's see. Israel. This is from Human Rights Watch. Soldiers punishment for using boy as human shield. Inadequate. Wait, punishment. So this means it is outlawed, but I think this is that's 2010. So they are punishing people for doing it now, but just not adequately. So one example here, the neighbor procedure is what that's synonymous to human shields. Okay. 3-month sentences and suspended for 2 years, demotion. Okay. So when he says it's a practice that's still used to this day, he might be overextending because it seems to be that you get in trouble if you do this. Maybe not enough trouble, but you do. Okay. It's not like policy anymore. Okay. Where's the Human Rights Watch? Oh, yeah. This is this is like okay, it's just the headline. No, the photo is different though. The photo is a different accusation. The photograph is a lot more, again, this is why I hate the word human shield, because people can't not think of like a Marvel scenario when they think of it. Like the human shield boy Jeep Israel. This is the photo, but apparently there is like this I don't know what the context is here, but I'm pretty sure the dismissal of this is because it was either like a one-off where the guy got reprimanded, or it was just like it's like a contextual thing. I don't know, but oh, it's 2 pictures actually. There you go. But I don't know how often this is practiced because I only ever see like, I guess I'll say this picture, but 2 pictures now. Yeah, I have no fucking idea what's going on here. But when people say human shields, generally, they're not referring to that, because the policy of human shields was the neighbor thing, the neighbor policy. Oh, and I can totally see why I didn't. I can totally see why I why I turned off that snap function. Okay, whatever.
Continues even after the ban. Destiny also claimed that Amnesty International had accused Hamas of using civilians as human shields in 2014.
I know they didn't. They didn't do that, yeah. Okay. I know what report they're talking about here. This is 22 days, isn't it, of death and destruction? Is it? No, it's 2014. I'm talking about the 2014 one. Amnesty 2014, Israel, Hamas. The problem with the Amnesty report isn't that they accused Hamas of using human shields, is that they define human shields in a very unique way. The problem, yeah, we're going to get into that. Is this the one? Human. It's not the 2014 one. No, this is Hamas killing and torturing people. Oh, that's a different story. Where is the one? The questions and answers? This one's I've opened before. Human. This is yeah. So they describe human shield in a very specific way. I think they focus on intent. Maybe the legal definition does demand that, but yeah, but they say that Israel did human shielding, whereas they say that they still say that Hamas launched their attacks from civilian areas and kept their infrastructure in civilian areas. But I always thought, according to the IHL, I thought that was the definition of human shield. That's why I don't understand. I think intent does matter. So maybe that was just like they couldn't find the intent for Hamas. But yeah, it's co-location of military objectives and civilians with the specific intent of trying to prevent the targeting of those military objectives. But I guess we do know that they co-locate military objectives and civilians. We do know they do that. We also know that they do it intentionally, but maybe not for this purpose, because they say usually when Hamas tells people not to leave their houses, when Israel are telling them to leave, is they'll say don't do it because it's like a propaganda, or it's like, or that it's like it's basically gonna be like another Nakba, like you won't be able to go back, kind of thing. Yeah. So it's not guerrilla warfare, you fucking idiot. Jesus Christ, that's not the same as in guerrilla warfare, you dumb cunt. Okay, sorry. Let's just stay focused. Okay. See, they say here they've stored munitions in and fired indiscriminate rockets from residential areas, but they don't count this as human shielding. What do they say Israel did? I think when they say Israel, I think they mean the neighbor thing, right? Or like using civilians as shields, like actually in combat. Is this the one where, maybe we'll just see what he says. Hang on.
Do you also acknowledge that they say that, for instance, like Hamas uses human shields?
Yes.
Amnesty International says that.
They do not. What human rights organizations accuse Hamas of, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, is the fact that they operate in civilian areas and hide in civilian areas, which endanger civilians. They acknowledge that much. That is not the legal definition of human shield.
That is the legal definition.
I know what human rights organizations document.
Well, yes, you don't. You didn't know that in 2014, Amnesty International said that Hamas was using human shields. So
again,
Nah, he's wrong about that. No, in a legal sense, they didn't. But again, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone other than Amnesty argue that legal definition. That's the thing I don't get. If they say it's intent to prevent the targeting, is it not the case that, yeah, how would you prove that? That would be like the hard thing to prove for people like for Hamas. Like, what if you do it with the intent of getting the civilian casualty numbers up so you can do better in the propaganda war? I don't know. Would that no longer make it a human shield? I get like this is the problem with you, like with reading the words of a law versus the way it's actually used and applied. This is why I don't like the term human shields. I don't like it. It just sounds like a meme. It sounds comical. Yeah, they're saying specific intent, or does it say specific intent? Where did I see that? But yeah, I don't know. I always thought, when I thought people say the words human shields, they're just referring to that they use civilian infrastructure and that's why the casualty numbers are high. I don't know if it was actually like, when people say that, they actually think that Hamas are running around and like grabbing civilians and taking them to the fucking rooftop next to the rocket launcher and they're just like, hang on. Like, I don't know. I mean, we do know that there are some, because the IDF does this, they post videos of them aborting strikes if there are too many civilians in the area. Whether they do that just because like they bomb as soon as they stop filming, I don't know. But whether or not those civilians were actually put there by Hamas would be a different story, because I don't think you could prove that. All right.
You don't know what you're talking.
Yeah, like when people say human shields, like it does make people think about like really comical scenarios, like people having civilians duct taped to their chests. Yeah.
About.
Oh, well, I've actually read the reports. You should try it sometime.
Well, let's look at the Amnesty reports of 2014. Addressing Israel's claims of human shields during the assault, Amnesty International said they have no evidence that Palestinian civilians were intentionally being used as human shields. After the assault, they issued another report saying that even though Hamas's conduct endangered civilians, it did not necessarily amount to using human shields. But more surprising was that Destiny did not have a basic understanding of the core issues in Palestine and Israel. He didn't even...
Israel has the Hannibal Directive. Why would Hamas care about human shields? Okay, let's just ask a really honest question, okay? Sure, August, and I might ban you if you don't answer this honestly. As far as the Hannibal Doctrine goes, it seems to be that there might have been one instance on October 7th where Haaretz have put out an article saying there needs to be an investigation because the Hannibal Doctrine might have been used here. When they talk about the one house where 14 hostages died that was hit by an Israeli tank. We don't know, that hasn't been investigated, whether or not Hannibal Doctrine was the reason they did that, or if it was confusion, or if it was the panic, or if it was false information, or it was recklessness by one soldier, or like who actually fired the shot. We don't know. Again, also Hannibal Doctrine, yeah, the words of the Hannibal Doctrine refer to soldiers, not to civilians generally. So the question would be, if we're talking about is the IDF or Hamas, however much you want to criticize either of them, just this one issue, which one do you think endangers their own civilians by the way that they practice military by the way that they practice, by the way they do conduct military practice? Do you think Hamas is endangering their civilians by the way they conduct military operations more than the IDF, or other way around? Which one endangers their civilians more by the way they conduct war? Hamas or the IDF? Like, I feel like you can even just own it and say Hamas because they have to, because they can't, like, they would just all die if they started fighting in the fields. Like, okay. Anyway, dumb fuck.
Understand that Israel's entire presence in the West Bank is considered a military occupation that Israel was obligated to end, and that every last settlement that Israel
Sorry, we're keeping score, aren't we? So I think we got probably two L's from Dustin so far. Okay.
built in the West Bank is considered illegal under international law. I think we're missing the forest for the trees here. The idea is Israel's presence in the West Bank is illegal. They have to leave.
Whether something is legal or illegal is not really at issue here. Like everything here, the legality of all of this is.
And when he did not like what international law has to say, he manufactured complexity and ambiguity where there was none. The entire international human rights consensus and international law consensus on this, which is that Israel's occupation and settlements and wall in the West Bank are absolutely and categorically illegal. I would like to touch on a couple of...
I mean, like, again, like the legality question here, first of all, when we're citing like human rights organizations or UN General Assembly, like all the UN General Assembly resolutions are non-binding. When you look at like a resolution like 242, it doesn't...
242 is Security Council though, right? It's Security Council Resolution 242, no?
Even really makes sense.
Well, first of all, UN Resolution 242 is not a General Assembly resolution. It's a Security Council resolution, and those are legally binding. And second, what does it make sense about it? It's actually pretty straightforward. It cites the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war on calls on Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories.
Wait. I feel like, okay, wait. Am I being really picky here? I feel like if you're a pro-Palestinian activist, you wouldn't say the occupied territories. You would criticize 242 for not including the word here, the, or all the territories, right? Isn't that the whole contention that people have with 242? Is that it doesn't say withdraw from the occupied territories? Isn't that they're non-binding, but they can be used to indicate customary international law, which can be binding. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought they were just binding. I thought they were like, do it. Isn't this the... No, wait. Am I wrong, though? Isn't the pro-Palestinian argument the fact that the word the is omitted? Because I'm trying to think, if we're talking about 242, the legal contentions when it comes to 242, I'm trying to think where to start. I know Shirogus is just going to say anything beyond the green line is occupied because he's programmed. Yeah, it's complicated. That's what I thought. I thought it's incredibly complicated because the way I see it is that there's two arguments you can make. One is that there's actually like a general legal principle in international law that I don't really hear spoken about that much. It's called something. It's got a weird name, but I forget what it's called. It's basically the idea that if a new country is formed, this is very much post-British Empire, if a new country is formed, then the borders of that new country should be the borders that as they were under the previous administrative power. So that's how borders were decided for like Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. This is like one argument people make, like Kenya and like a lot of like post British and French Empire countries. But if you apply that to Israel-Palestine, that would mean that if a new country is formed, like a new state is recognized, like Israel, then you would say those borders would have to be the same as they were under the previous like administrative ruler, which would be the British Mandate. But that would mean it's all Israel, West Bank, Gaza, and Israel. But the problem with that is that neither side really, really wants that, because Palestinians obviously don't want it because they don't want to be like part of Israel, and Israelis would kind of not really like that fact to be addressed all the time either, because that would mean that if it were true that actually it's all Israel legally by the like basic legal principles of borders, then they'd actually be doing de jure apartheid. It would be actually like they couldn't say it's being done in occupied territory. It would actually be like apartheid. And then if that is the case, then it would also mean they have to apply like human rights laws and the Geneva Convention to like that whole area as well, which they don't. So they'd have to give voting rights. So yeah, that's really murky. But that's the problem, is that like that legal foundation obviously is kind of irrelevant. Like that's not really relevant to this situation. It doesn't really illustrate anything about the complexities and the needs of the situation. And I think when 242 was drafted, I think this is why they didn't put the word the in here, or all the territories. I think that's why, isn't it? And I think that's why, like, was it not Khalidi who I read this from, basically saying that the whole, like, taking that word out was very, like, convenient, because it basically meant, like, well, which territories? Like, they gave back Sinai. I'm trying to think. There's a statement I'm looking for from one of the drafters. Also, just to be clear, no one gives a fuck about international law, like when it comes to this stuff. Like, at least when it comes to the borders and all that stuff, because I feel like people who invoke 242 like it's gospel would also say that the Palestinians were completely justified in fighting against the partition plan, even though that was a United Nations like resolution. So I don't know, fuck. But you could reject the looser interpretation. Yeah, I mean, I imagine they do, right? That's the whole. I think that's what I said as well when I did the video on this 242 thing, didn't I? Because I said that like the whole fact that they omitted the word "the" was like the kind of inconvenient thing, where that was General Assembly. Okay. The partition plan. Wait, are we not saying that both of them aren't legally binding though? Because like the Security Council is only legally binding if So the Security Council is only legally binding if it's not legally binding, but it means it can be used to invoke the courts, right? Where's that quote I'm looking for? I want to hear one of the people say why they did this with 242. Was it this guy? Was it Lord? Of course, he was called Lord Caradon. Hugh M. Foote. Jesus. Much play has been made of the fact that we didn't say the territories or all the territories. But that was deliberate. I myself knew very well the 67 boundaries, and if we had put the or all the, that could only have meant that we wished to see the 1967 boundaries perpetuated in the form of a permanent frontier. This I was certainly not prepared to recommend. The basis for any settlement will be United Nations Security Council Resolution 242, of which you were the architect. Would you say there is a contradiction between the part of the resolution that stresses the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war and that which calls for Israeli withdrawal from occupied territories, but not from the occupied territories? I defend the resolution as it stands, my lord. What it states, as you know, is first the general principle of inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war. That means you can't justify holding onto territory merely because you conquered it. Okay. We could have said, well, you go back to the 67 line. But I know the 67 line, and it's a rotten line. You couldn't have a worse line for a permanent international boundary. It's where troops happened to be on a certain night in 1948. It's got no relation to the needs of the situation. So what are the needs of the situation? Oh. What did he want? Had we said you must go back to the 67 line, which would have resulted if we had specified a retreat from all the occupied territories, we would have been wrong. In New York, what did we know about? Is he talking about different parts of the world? Okay. If we had attempted in New York to draw a new line, we would have been rather vague. So what we stated was the principle that you couldn't hold territory because you conquered it. Therefore, there must be a withdrawal to, let's read the words carefully, secure and recognized boundaries. They can only be secure if they are recognized. The boundaries have to be agreed. It's only when you get agreement that you get secure. This is how I understood it, because if it was ever the case that there was a two-state solution that, because it's only really relevant to two states, like if there was a two-state solution that both sides agreed upon, but it involved land swaps, it would be a pretty shit objection. Assuming both sides agree to it, it would be a pretty shit objection for someone to be like, yeah, but it's not the 67, it's not the 242 boundaries. Okay. At that point, it's like, would you not just do what the two sides are willing to accept? Or, and it's also not, like, when it comes to a one-state solution, then you wouldn't really be, I guess you could invoke this with, like, end occupation. And one way that you can end occupation is by annexing it and giving voting rights. So, yeah. Anyway. The boundaries have to be agreed. It's only when you get agreement that you get security. I think that now people begin to realize what we had in mind, that security doesn't come from arms. It doesn't come from territory. It doesn't come from geography. It doesn't come from one side domination, the other. Okay. It can only come from agreement and mutual respect and understanding. Therefore, what we did, I think, was right. What the resolution said was right, and I would stand by it. It needs to be added to now, of course. We didn't attempt to deal with the question of the Palestinians and of Jerusalem then. This is why people say that 242... Okay. But merely to state the general principles of the admissibility of acquisition of territory by war. I feel like this explains the Clinton parameters all that very well, right? Because that's what they say. Like 242 is the general principle that you work over. Yeah, okay. We meant that the occupied territories could not be held merely because they were occupied, but we deliberately did not say that the old line, where the troops happened to be on that particular night many years ago, was an ideal demarcation line. Yeah, okay. What did other drafters have to say about it? Is this the only one that is in this? Because this is like a fairly pro-Israel site, I think, camera.org. We didn't say there should be a withdrawal to the 67 line. We did not put the in. We did not say all the territories deliberately. We all knew that the boundaries of 67 were not drawn as permanent frontiers. They were a ceasefire line a couple of decades earlier. We did not say that the 67 boundaries must be forever. I don't get this. Is there anyone who's actually like wedded to the 67 borders? Is there anyone out there who's like, there can be no land swaps, like just 67 borders? I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard people make that argument. I've heard people be very like religious about like 242 and all that, but I don't know. Seems so. I've forgotten what I pray to the 67 borders every night. Partial to the 1917 borders. Wow. Wait, 1917 is before the Negev was added to Palestine, wasn't it? Wasn't Palestine added to wasn't the Negev added to the Mandate of Palestine in the 20s? Negev added to The issue is who has title to the land. Wait, is that? I don't know if that's a joke. I don't know what that means. Like a lord. Yeah, the Negev was added in 22. So if you're sticking by this 1917 borders, you're probably quite fucked up. That would be an insane partition. Like one side gets the Negev and the others get the rest. Okay. Oh, do you mean the title isn't like land ownership? Like hang on. Like whatever this map is this the right map? I wish I could find a version of this map that's not from Reddit, but it seems to be the most detailed. Oh, it's... Ooh. I remember reading a very long effort post about the partition plan and about how much effort went into coming up with those borders. But this was ownership, I think, just before the partition plan. What? So yeah, these blue ones are Jewish-owned land, apparently. This is like, I guess they owned like 6% of the land in this time, 45. And then the Arab-owned, and then the rest of it's like unregistered, undeveloped. Yeah. The map is incorrect, is it? Yeah, I would like to get one that's not from Reddit. That might be, but as far as when I read about percentages, it seems right. Like the Arabs owned like a little bit more, but most of it was unregistered. Is that not true? Oh, okay. Property ownership and title of a state sovereign. Okay. So what are they arguing about here? I thought so. The general principle is you shouldn't be allowed to hold on to occupied territory forever. But obviously, if there's a negotiation and whatever, and there's like some shift where Palestinians are like, well, you can take this occupied territory, but we're taking this one back, even though it's actually Israeli territory. Like that, yeah. Like, I don't know what, yeah.
Israel's occupation and settlements and wall in the West Bank are absolutely and categorically illegal. I would like to touch on a couple of...
I mean, like, again, like the legality question here. First of all, when we're citing like human rights organizations or UN General Assembly, like all the UN General Assembly resolutions are non-binding. When you look at like a resolution like 242, it doesn't even really make sense.
Well, first of all, UN Resolution 242 is not a General Assembly resolution, it's a Security Council resolution, and those are legally binding.
So again, this is... Okay, fuck me. They have the potential to be legally binding. But how do you decide when they say it can be legally binding? Because okay, we're just learning so much now about international law. Okay, and I'm guessing people have tried to invoke 242 like in a legal way, though, right? They've tried to pursue like criminal. The process is complicated. Is it? Yeah, I'm kind of. I knew it was. I didn't think it was. Am I just cucking out by saying, like, at the end of the day, no one gives a fuck about what the actual, where the law takes us on this particular issue, right? I think what people care about is there needs to be a resolution that can be agreed upon by, like, a Palestinian and Israeli leadership. And that resolution that they both agree upon, obviously without coercion and shit, like, if they can agree upon something, then that would be I don't think it would matter if what they agree upon was illegal, would it? Like, at least as far as this depth goes. But then, like, invoking 242 to say that, like, you shouldn't be building settlements in the West Bank, I don't think there's a problem with that because, Okay, man.
And second, what doesn't make sense about it? It's actually pretty straightforward.
Stop engaging with this conversation. There's no need for you to obfuscate and what's that word? Okay. With the facts of the conversation, either engage with it in good faith or don't. What have I said about this as bad faith? Direful.
It cites the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war on calls on Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories.
See, it's like it's the fact that this Omar dude is squeezed in the word "the" there, even though apparently this resolution was drafted for the very specific intent to not include the word "the" because they don't consider the 67 borders to be like the most meaningful thing to like the needs of the situation, and they said that in the 70s. Which you can contest, but yeah, I wouldn't, yeah.
But deflecting was Destiny's weapon of choice. Whenever he would recognize that he was losing the argument, he would either try to change the topic.
Why is it that Jordan doesn't seem to care about the border controls? Could it have to do with the fact that in 1970, the PLO and Arafat literally tried to kill the Jordanian king?
Or he would dive into a level of detail that's just completely pointless, and either you chase him down that rabbit hole and lose the point you're trying to make, or else he would cleverly accuse you of not wanting to engage the details, allegedly because you're uninformed.
13,000 to 14,000 new housing units were constructed every single year. And then I think it was from 94 or 93 to, I think it was to 97, that number was like less than 5,000. It was only new housing units that were being constructed.
I mean, just for clarity's sake, I feel like we can get into the weeds on this.
I want to get into the weeds. That's where I want to go, yeah.
Yeah.
We can go very into the weeds. I think it's very important to get into the weeds on this.
So even in places
I know that you keep saying that. This is hilarious. They don't want to get lost in the weeds. They don't want to deal with the history. You just don't know the facts.
Now, if you want to know the exact number of how many thousands of housing units Israel built in settlements, or how many new settlements, or how many new outposts, you can just go to Peace Now's website and see it all broken down in charts. But none of it changes the fact that all of this construction is illegal, and all of it is an infringement on Palestinians' right to their land. And another tactic he used is whenever he could not defend Israel.
Okay, so I know there's a really, I spoke about this yesterday, but I guess since this is a segment, I guess I'll do it again. This is where I'm at when it comes to settlements now. Okay, this is when we're talking about the Oslo Accords. So this is I think for the first one, let's say the first 2 points there about the human. I think that those were Destiny L's. I think I don't know if I'm going to give a W to this dude on the 242 thing because I feel like he's not really being that clear about the complexity of the situation. But whatever. Let's go into this one. The settlements thing. I've heard people make this argument before. Is that there's this whole debate about settlement expansion in during the Oslo Accords. And when they say expansion, sometimes people confuse that for the construction of new settlements, which wasn't the case, but expansion was the case. And then some people will try to defend the new expansion to say that's not a big deal because that's just them doing this, right? Which again, I'd say is still bad. You're still investing resources that could be invested in removing outposts, of which they removed, I think there were 60 outposts around that period, and Barak got rid of like 16. But it's actually not this at all. Like settlement expansion it can include this, right? And it did include this, but that's not even as bad as it gets. Some settlement expansion during the Oslo Accords was them taking outposts that were illegal and legalizing them. And that didn't count as new settlements because they just incorporated it into an old settlement. Sometimes those settlements were quite far away. Those outposts were quite far away, like miles away. So the way they treated settlements during the Oslo Accords was it was not good. And this idea that it declined is a bit dishonest as well, because the decline in settlement population growth in the Oslo Accords was real, but it was only a decline compared to the 91 and 92. Because in 91, 92, like just before Oslo, was the fall of the Soviet Union. And in the fall of the Soviet Union, a bunch of Soviet Jews, and like a very large number of Soviet Jews, got rammed into the West Bank, right? And Israel. So I think if you compare settlement expansion in the 90s to like the 80s, it's about the same. Or closer than 1991. So, and another point that I don't think ever gets brought up when it comes to settlement stuff as well is that there were two things that I think were very unfair, I think, that the Israelis did. There were two things that I think the Israelis did that were quite unfair in regards to settlements. Because again, settlements weren't really a big part of the Oslo Accord. I don't think the Oslo Accord said free settlements. But Yitzhak Rabin did make what I consider like a reasonably good faith effort at distinguishing security settlements from what he called political settlements. And when he expanded settlements, he only expanded like security ones. Whereas Ehud Barak, and obviously Netanyahu, ditched that distinction and they just expanded wherever the fuck. That's like a pretty important thing, I think. And the problem with security settlements as well, especially with regards to Netanyahu, is that there is a security settlement, and just to double check where the map of this is, I think I might have got this wrong last time. Jordan Valley, the Jordan Valley, where's the Jordan Valley in the West Bank? It's like around this area, right? Like near the border, yeah. Was that the right wing of Israel had a definition of security that was far more broad than what was actually could be reasonably understood as like security justification. And their big example of this was the Jordan Valley, because in the Jordan Valley, and I think there's a clip of Netanyahu bragging about this, was that they basically exaggerated the security benefits of this area and tried to hold on to it and expand it as much as they could. So in Camp David, when they were talking about a transfer of Jordan Valley to the Palestinians, I think it was only parts of it, and it was for over a period of like up to 20 years, which is pretty shit. The Clinton parameters, and I think other Israeli politicians kind of realized that, and even that guy Shlomo Ben Ami described the security significance of the Jordan Valley as like mythological. So we can find that as well. Jordan Valley. Was this bit the rationale behind Israel's traditional claim to the Jordan Valley as a forward defense line, a claim that did not necessarily require Israeli sovereignty on the valley, long-term lease? He was here, yeah. This is when they're saying the Clinton parameters had offered like the 6-year transfer of the Jordan Valley. And he's saying the Jordan Valley, the mythological strategic asset sanctified by generations of Israeli generals, would be gradually handed over to full Palestinian sovereignty. Yeah. So that's, yeah. The Israeli behavior towards settlements, and I think for Yitzhak Rabin, you can maybe argue that there was a reasonable effort made there, but with Netanyahu, no. Barak, no, not really. No. Anyway.
Israel's indefensible policy.
Barak's argument is that he dismantled some outposts. I think he dismantled 16 or 15 out of like 50 or 60.
He would crack jokes. Did you know that at the beginning of the blockade, potato chips were not allowed in, sodas were not allowed in, cookies were not allowed in? Can you explain to me what threat cookies pose to Israel from your perspective?
Well, if they're the Keebler Elf ones, it's like 200 calories a cookie, so maybe they just didn't want people getting fat.
But the most interesting exchange was about me accurately quoting Israeli Foreign Minister Shlomo Ben Ami when he said that had he been Palestinian, he would not have accepted Israel's offer at Camp David II.
Camp David was not the missed opportunity for the Palestinians, and if I were a Palestinian, I would have rejected Camp David as well. This is something I put in the book.
The quote from the debate is extremely clear and straightforward. But in a desperate attempt to deflect, Destiny says that instead of believing your eyes and ears, what you should do is go read the book so that you would understand that the quote actually means something else.
People accuse me of not knowing anything about this topic, but then I understand when you're debating things like this, you don't know anything about the topic. And that's why you get upset when you talk about like getting in the weeds. Even that quote that you gave earlier from the Israeli foreign minister.
In Israel, people use the word mythological to mean, that's what I mean. I'm not saying there was no security reason at all. I'm saying that it was exaggerated. Fuck. I said that.
About how like I wouldn't have accepted the deal if I was a Palestinian at the time. That's not what he said. That's not what that quote says. And if you actually go to the book and you actually read the passage where he talks about it, what he said was that conditions were not right at the time for Palestinians to feel like they could accept that deal.
Now, the bad news for Destiny is I didn't just read the book. I took meticulous notes because I was working on my master's thesis on this subject when this book came out. And sure enough, what he claims about Camp David simply isn't there. Now, this is where it gets really funny. Destiny further embarrasses himself by tweeting a video at me made by one of his clueless followers mocking me because he thought that it proved me wrong about this.
I tried to look for this in this book. I don't know. When he's saying if I were Palestinian, I would have rejected Camp David. It's the way he says it is like the reasons he gives for it are not quite the same as like it was like him, because again, this guy's like an Israeli politician. I don't think it's him like saying it was like a horrible deal. I think what he's saying is he's talking about the circumstances the negotiations come up. That's definitely part of it. The way that they talk about how the Americans went into Camp David and then like f***ed off for a week and just left people to their own devices. I think that's something he mentions here as well. He mentions how I think he mentions the third redeployment that Barak withheld to use as a bargaining chip for Camp David. The fact that like America didn't actually have any understanding of either side's red lines going into Camp David. The fact that like Israel and that Barak and Arafat went into Camp David with different understandings of what constituted the West Bank, so that when Barak was saying this is like 92%, Arafat was actually seeing 86%. Like there was a lot of shit going on there that just made it, and it was like scrambled together. It was like a kind of last minute thing. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons that you can say Camp David failed. But when it comes to also the Hezbollah model, obviously, because Hezbollah had just kicked out the Israeli occupation that lasted like 15, 20 years. And obviously there was a lot of pressure on him to follow that model. But Ben Ami also, and I don't know if this guy's going to address it, Ben Ami said that about Camp David, but he also is very, very angry about Arafat for his response to the Clinton parameters. So I think he says here, like, Camp David might not have been the deal Palestinians could have accepted. The real lost opportunities came later on. The negotiations continued after Camp David. More than 50 meetings between the parties and the American mediators, both in Israel and the United States, took place throughout the summer and autumn of 2000. This was a sequence of roundtables that culminated on 23rd of December in a meeting in the cabinet room adjacent to the Oval Office. The parameters were not the arbitrary and sudden whim of a lame duck president. They represented a brilliantly devised point of equilibrium between the positions of the parties as they stood at that particular moment in the negotiations. So he talks about the package, he talks about the map, And then he gets very, very upset at Arafat for not answering by the deadline. And I think there's something about like like he's pretty scathing. He's like, Arafat lingered. He refused to respond. As usual, he resumed his journeys throughout the world as if he were the traveling Emperor Hadrian, in the hope of evading any decision. Another meeting with Mubarak. Yeah, so like, but yeah, he is saying that Camp David, like, he doesn't see Camp David as the same missed opportunity that I think Destiny does. He sees Clinton parameters as a missed opportunity and Taba, and he sees the Intifada obviously as a horrible idea. And he also sees Arafat. He definitely doesn't like Arafat. Yeah. Saudi ambassador saying it was a crime. Yeah. Maps were exchanged. The new American administration. Anyway. And I think there's some theory about the idea that Arafat was either waiting for the Second Intifada, to push more concessions. That was one theory, or the other theory that he was waiting for a different president because he knew that Clinton was on his way out and he thought Bush might have been better. Again, because like going back then, Republicans sometimes actually did hit Israel harder than Democrats did. Like Bush Senior with his like withholding funds and shit like that. Yeah. It's not pronounced. It's pronounced Rabin. I've heard two Israelis, real life Israelis, saying calling him Rabin. I only hear people who are not Israeli call him Rabin. So I don't know. That's why I changed that. I don't know. Anyway.
Quote. Check it out. I think it's important to engage in good faith and to know what you're talking about and to not say things that you don't understand. I've watched that debate with Israel's foreign minister on more than one occasion. What he was saying is that the deal that was offered to Palestinians at the end of Camp David was a bad deal, and if he were Palestinian, he would not have accepted it.
This is him shitting on Arafat's behavior for Taba, not Camp David, I'm guessing. One would have to be blind not to understand that these were the last days of the Israeli left in power, maybe for many years. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And that's literally not what he said. If you watch the debate, and I watched...
Omar's just wrong. No, Omar's right. Omar's right that Ben Ami did say, I wouldn't have accepted Camp David if I were a Palestinian. I don't think he's saying it for the same reasons, though. I don't actually know because I don't think I've seen him say the reasons I see him give here, and I haven't read all of it, but the reasons I saw him give when he's talking about Camp David are the American fuck-ups when it came to the negotiations and the fact that like just like the general like scrambling nature of it, which admittedly did result in a bad deal. And obviously in hindsight, you can say I wouldn't have accepted Camp David because the Clinton parameters were better than Camp David. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But when people use Ben Ami to say that, like, because I feel like people invoke Ben Ami to say that the Israeli negotiations, like from the Israeli left, was like completely bad faith, doomed to fail, blah, blah, blah. And here's the evidence because he's saying I would have had Camp David. But Ben Ami does go on to say after Camp David that he thinks Arafat was completely in the wrong in his response and Clinton and Taba. So didn't he just say it was a bad deal? Did he? Or here? No, this is the bit I just read. So this person who's done this little fucking gotcha tweet is thinking about Taba and Clinton parameters. Whereas the Ben Ami quote is referring to Camp David. Do we understand now? Okay.
He would not have accepted it.
And that's literally not what he said. If you watch the debate, and I watched that debate, it was literally hosted on Democracy Now!, and he's quoting his own book. And if you go back and read the book...
Did it not just say Camp David on screen? Who the fuck is watching my streams? He's saying one thing about Camp David, and he's saying another thing about the Clinton parameters. Should we watch it again? Should we listen to the music? The book. What about the book? What? This, here. Camp David might not have been the deal Palestinians could have accepted. The parameters were not the arbitrary and sudden whim of a lame duck president. They represented a brilliantly devised point. So this person who's doing the gotcha is actually saying, no, they are saying, yeah, so the person who's doing the gotcha video here seems to be, if I can read their mind, they seem to be saying that, okay, yeah, he said that about Camp David, but he also said that the Clinton parameters that came after were very good, and that Arafat was in the wrong for basically like he didn't snub them, but he like fucked about with them, is what they say, right? So the person who posted this is just saying like, okay, you're quoting Ben Ami who said the thing about Camp David, but also like he's going on to say that Clinton parameters and Taba were very fucked up, was a failure on Arafat's part. Whereas most people, when they invoke Ben Ami, at least for the like leftist side, is they invoke Ben Ami just for Camp David. They don't say what Ben Ami said about Taba and the Clinton parameters. And I know for a fact that people like Direful and Puerto Rico wouldn't have known about that either. So, but Ben Ami called both deals good. No, I don't know. I don't know where he's saying that both deals were good. Oh, unless this dipshit is actually saying, unless this person is actually completely wrong and they're pointing Camp David and assuming that Ben Ami is saying this about Camp David, that would be wrong.
And
that's literally not what he said. If you watch the debate, and I watched that debate, it was literally hosted on Democracy Now, and he's quoting.
Funny that Omar is only showing 4 instances from the entire debate. Yeah, this is obviously I don't know why people do that. I don't know why people, if they're responding to someone, but the person they're responding to was right about like 1 or 2 things, like why they can't just say that. Like that's a bit weird to me. Like unless Omar thinks he was right about everything, I don't know. Maybe he was.
Quoting his own book, and if you go back and read the book instead of just watching a YouTube video, you'll see the context of what was given.
I mean, I know why it works. It works because if someone sees you admitting you're wrong, they don't assume it's because it's good faith. They might just say like, well, people who admit they're wrong are weak, and we don't. Yeah.
And what was given was that
we'll make that available. I'm glad you're saying that. I think we're going to be able to clip this up. I'm going to clip up that part of the debate. We'll put it up there with the quotes of the book, which I have sitting on my shelf. I'm happy to do all of this.
The Intifada could not usher in a negotiated settlement precisely because lacking attainable objectives. It raised the expectations to an unrealistic heights. Again, yeah, this is the context of Clinton parameters.
And that's pretty cute, but the problem is that the confused person who made this video grabbed book quotes not about the Camp David offer that I was referencing, but about a different set of negotiations at Taba. And the reason why that distinction is really important is because the Camp David offer that I referenced and that Ben Ami said he would not accept had he been Palestinian happened in the summer of 2000, several months before the Intifada. Whereas the harsh conditions being referenced in the book here in this video talk about conditions being created by the Intifada that made future negotiations and an agreement more difficult for Palestinians to accept.
Is he talking about conditions around Camp? But I thought he was talking about conditions surrounding Camp David. What's he talking about? That argument doesn't make sense. The quotes that we just read were when it comes to the Intifada, like I wonder what his opinion is on the Intifada about or Arafat's behavior in it. Okay.
So those conditions could not have possibly.
No, he's not mixing the first and second Intifada. What the fuck are you talking about? No, the timeline's right. I just don't know why he's I don't know why he's invoking that.
Possibly been in reference to the Camp David offer that Ben Ami was talking about in this quote, because the Intifada had not happened yet.
Oh, it's because he's just illustrating how Ben Ami is talking about the thing. Okay.
And yet, Destiny is so clueless that he just doubled down on his obvious error. And he's such a grifter that he even tried to take credit for having guessed what interview I got this Ben Ami quote from, even though I had already mentioned the source when I first shared the quote with him. And by the way, if Destiny knows Ben Ami's book so well, he probably would have noticed that in it...
Because the Intifada made accepting the parameters unrealistic? How? I don't understand, like, because of the Israeli response to it, or Second Intifada, they put the start date at 28th of September, which I'm guessing is Sharon's visit to the Temple Mount. Clinton parameters, hang on. This was like almost around exactly the same time, wasn't it? Or was it before? When did the Clinton parameters... They were presented in December. Okay, they were after. Was that ever cited as a reason that it was harder to accept it was harder for Palestinians to accept Clinton parameters and Taba because of the Intifada? I don't think I've ever seen that argument. The Intifada made things unrealistic, I think, because it weakened the Israeli left, and that's one reason anyway. And it also made it like Israeli society in general, like not want to concede as much, and it also obviously like it's bad all around because you've got fucking Israelis dying to the suicide bombings, and then you've got the IDF with their incredibly like hawkish response in the West Bank, killing a bunch of people. Yeah.
Ben-Ami proves almost every argument that...
Whoa.
He probably would have noticed that in it, Ben-Ami...
The most absurd march of folly that the state of Israel has ever embarked on, the creation of a dense map of settlements throughout the territories. Okay. I don't think anyone disagrees with that, do we?
He proves almost every
Perez opposed the idea of a Palestinian state. Okay.
argument that Destiny himself spent.
The Al-Aqsa Intifada did not merely as a tactical move, it erupted out of the accumulated rage and frustration of the Palestinian masses at the colossal failure of the peace process since the early days of Oslo to offer them a life of dignity and well-being. Okay, that doesn't... It's good that he mentions that, because I don't like the idea of people saying that when people try to push this theory that Arafat started the Intifada himself. It doesn't make any sense anyway.
Our entire debate trying to deny.
Israel's disproportionate response to what started as a popular uprising with young unarmed men confronting Israeli soldiers armed with lethal weapons. This is true as well, I guess. Yeah, this is true as well, because it was, I think, after the tunnel riots when the IDF actually had a choice between two proposed models. One was about trying to keep the peace and like minimize casualties and respond to protests in a very restrained way, and then the other was the one that they chose, which was fuck shit up, basically. Yeah, they had a name for it. I think it's in the Jeremy Pressman essay. Is it here? The one of the tunnel riots. Oh yeah, the 96 tunnel riots. But I think the security measures that we're talking about came from here. Is it Operation Field of Thorns? Arming settlers. They actually, yeah, they even engaged in training their soldiers to prepare to take over parts of Area A, which is, ooh. What program is that? Obsidian.
And what's remarkable is that there is a cult-like quality to social media today that is immune to counter-evidence. Whether it's Destiny or Alex Jones or any other grifter who gains prominence by peddling nonsense to a large and loyal fan base, it really highlights that we're in a post-truth environment.
Oh.
It's why even someone like Lex Friedman, in a well-meaning attempt to enhance understanding about Palestine and Israel, finds himself trying to host a debate between actual experts, like Mu'in Rabbani and Norman Finkelstein on one hand, and then a clueless YouTuber like Destiny being thrown in the mix. Because grifters are actually good at sounding like they know what they're talking about. And it takes real knowledge and effort to tell experts and charlatans apart.
Wow. Well, I think at least two of those were definitely Destiny L's. I don't think the 242 thing, I don't think either of them really addressed the complexity of 242. When it comes to the Taba Camp David thing, again, it's like a technically right, maybe it's like a third L, but I don't know. I don't think I've seen this thing in the book when he's talking about Camp David being a bad deal. I don't think I've seen that part. I've seen the parts of him saying like that the conditions surrounding it made it so that it made sense to reject it. I completely understand that bit. But I guess maybe I'll just read more of it and see if I find it. But it's like in the Camp David section, so it would be weird that he's not saying like it's bad because the airspace or this percentage of board. Like I don't think he doesn't mention that though. He doesn't mention like the terms of the deal that he disliked. He talks about problems with like the way that the delegates behaved, or the lack of understanding beforehand, or the circumstances leading up to it, and like definitely with or even external circumstances like Hezbollah, and maybe even also just like the poor expectations of what Oslo was supposed to deliver. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, wow. What's the name of the dude on screen? His name is I can't say it properly. Omar Baddar.
So I have.
We're not watching it twice. Damn. Destiny said something that's untrue. Why does he think 242 is not binding? Yeah, that's like, again, so 242 has the potential to be, as far as I don't even know what that means, but whatever. I don't know if I'm not going to count that necessarily as an L though, because also the problem with 242 is that it was drafted specifically to avoid the question, to avoid committing to the 67 borders. That's why they said territories, not the territories. And I think when this guy even read it out, I think he actually said the word the territories, which I feel like he would know that the lack of that word the is the big problem with 242. Is actually why a lot of Palestinians don't think it deserves to be challenged on those grounds, right?
Those are legally binding. And second,
like here, right?
What doesn't make sense about it? It's actually pretty straightforward. It cites the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war on calls on Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories.
Yeah, I would say that's an error. I would say that's an error because it's not like the people who drafted it did that because they knew that it was unclear. Like, yeah. Anyway, or because they considered it unclear. Anyway, you should reach out to Omar. Yeah, maybe I will. If he's not off streamers. I need to understand what it means by Security Council resolutions not necessarily being binding, but they can be. Security Council resolutions, binding or non-binding. Let's see. Not legally binding on the member states. Let's see, binding. Because they say they have the potential to be legally binding. Oh, they don't mention the council there, do they? Yeah. SC. Oh, they're calling it SC. But I have a feeling if I try to learn about that, it's going to take a very long time. But that's okay. Anyway. But also the fact that whether or not it's binding doesn't make a difference to the fact that it is like deliberately ambiguous. I think that's the part that needs to be addressed, because obviously when there's going to be a negotiation based on like, if it's based on resolution 242, you'd have to account for that, right? Like which territories. But also I don't get how that would also, even if they took some territory, like that would still contradict the principle that you shouldn't take territory by conquest. I don't know. Yeah. That's for another day though. God. All right. Well done, guys. Cool.